Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of What the Dementia by Bambu Care. I'm your host, Brianna Wilson. I'm a certified dementia practitioner and the founder of Bambu Care, where you can find us at letsbamboo.com. So today we're going to dive into a topic we'll call engagement versus a quiet life, which was inspired by a thoughtful conversation that came up in our support community. So here's the context. One of our community members shared an experience about how her mom initially pushed social outings for her dad, but they ended up being stressful for him. She felt that sometimes we might project our own desires onto our loved ones, forgetting their limitations, which is absolutely true. She also expressed while there's advice out there to keep those with dementia engaged, socially, mentally, physically, I am beginning to question its universality. Universality meaning the quality of being true in or appropriate for all situations or all people, okay? And then another community member added that while her husband seems to enjoy social interactions, initiating them is never going to be his idea. She's been trying to keep him active because he still seems capable, but is also wondering if she should just let her husband live the quiet life, okay? So where should we start? Let's start here. So remember, one of the members said, I am beginning to question its universality, in reference to keeping those with dementia engaged. Now, one thing that's very important to understand about dementia care is that it is deeply personalized, or at least it should be, meaning that nothing within dementia care should ever be seen as a blanket approach. Now, I've talked about this before in our masterclass, but I honestly can't remember if I've said it on this podcast, so I'll say it now. A lot of times when people talk about different approaches to dementia care, I'm talking about dementia care educators as well, they make it seem so black and white and try to force a certain situation or occurrence into a one-size-fits-all model. That is what I consider a blanket approach. They try to take an approach and use it as a blanket to use to cover all things dementia care. But what you need is not a blanket, because what you will find is that a blanket is never going to be enough to cover it all. What you need is a basket. With a basket, you put what you need in it. You take the tools that you need and you put it in your basket so that you have them readily available to use in the way that best serves you for your particular situation with your partner living with dementia. So, based on the situation, the type of dementia, the stage of dementia, your partner's personality and life history, their current abilities, the root of the issue, etc., approaches can and will likely need to look different, okay? But let's try to stay focused here and focus on just the idea of keeping those with dementia engaged socially, mentally, and physically. So, is it important? Absolutely. Do people with dementia want to engage in life? I would say most, yes. Should we make attempts to keep everyone with dementia engaged? In my opinion, yes. Will engagement look the same for everyone? No, and that's the important distinction here. Engagement will not look the same for everyone, and it shouldn't, because if it is, that means that the experience is not being personalized, right? Now, something that a lot of people don't know is that as dementia progresses, a large percentage of those with dementia will develop what's called apathy. And I've done a whole podcast episode on it. It's episode 29, and I'll be sure to link it in the podcast notes. But apathy is an indifference to things. And when a person is apathetic, they're less likely to be curious about the world around them, engage with others, and less likely to be motivated to carry out everyday tasks or activities. Now, much of this has to do with an impairment in voluntary action or goal-oriented behavior. So, as dementia progresses, a person often loses their ability to initiate goal-oriented tasks, to be able to self-initiate, okay? So, for example, You may assume that because your partner is sitting in the same place all day long, doing nothing but watching the TV or letting the TV watch them, that they don't want to do anything. That's just the life they want to live. But that may not necessarily be the case. They may just be sitting there because they don't know what else they could be doing. Their brain is not guiding them in that manner. So that's where we come in. We have to help people with dementia create enjoyable experiences that they struggle to create for themselves, while being mindful of their response to those experiences and adjusting accordingly, okay? So you want to think, what did your partner like doing before developing dementia? What were their interests and hobbies? What really brought them joy? What are their current abilities? And how can we modify certain things that they used to enjoy to enable engagement? What elements should we be keeping in mind about the activity or environment to prevent them from becoming turned off by it, overstimulated and overwhelmed, or frustrated? How can we present the activity in a way that is more agreeable to them? So essentially, how can we lower the demands of the activity to better meet their needs? And again, with engagement, doing something can be better than doing nothing, but doing something a person actually enjoys and is personalized to them is better than just doing something for the sake of doing something, okay? And this is why paying attention to their response to activities is important. We have to be able to adjust and adapt. We have to be able to determine if the activity is a good fit, and if not, why. And so, to our members' point, one issue could be that sometimes we might project our own desires onto our loved ones, forgetting their limitations. Sometimes we want to keep things the way they've always been. And so if they participate in an activity, we want them to participate in that activity the same way that they used to. But that may not be a good fit for them anymore, okay? So let's use me as an example. I am not a social person. Now, sometimes people are surprised to hear that because I talk a lot. I like talking when I have something to say. But here's the thing. I do really well with one-on-one interactions, but if you put me in a group of people, even if it's my own family, I honestly don't always enjoy it. I just tolerate it because sometimes it's necessary, okay? I would classify myself as a socially awkward person, and on top of that, my family is very loud. And if they're talking and the TV is on too, it's a lot for me. But I can deal with it to an extent. I can regulate myself to a certain degree. However, if I were ever to develop something like dementia, and my family wanted to still include me in their social gatherings because it's what they want, I probably wouldn't fare well. I'd likely become overstimulated very quickly. It would be harder for me to regulate myself, and I'd probably shut down, freak out, or if I was mobile, try to leave the area. And it wouldn't be anything personal, it's simply because it's not a good fit for me. So instead of my family forcing me, quote unquote, to be a part of family gatherings because in their mind it sounds like a good idea, they might try having just one or two people over at a time to visit, being mindful of the needs to take turns to talk, talking in a way that I can be a part of the conversation, or introducing an inclusive game that we all can play, and turning the TV off while all this is happening. But it's more simple, it's a lot quieter, and there's more structure. It's something that is more within my ability to be able to handle. Do you see where I'm going with this? So whatever the activity is that you think your partner would enjoy, think how you can modify the activity and environment to better meet your partner's needs and abilities. And while you do this, you also want to keep in mind what stage your partner with dementia is in to help inform your thought process on not only the activity itself, but how you can modify it. And if you need information on this or a refresher, we have podcast episodes on the stages of dementia as well as on activities across the stages. So I'll link those in the podcast notes as well for you to check out if you're interested, okay? Now, let's transition a bit and briefly touch on the dilemma of allowing our partners to live a quiet life. So, first we have to define what a quiet life really means, and then recognize that a quiet life looks different for everyone. Now, is there some risk with allowing a person with dementia to live a quiet life? Yes, especially if we're talking about people in the early and middle stages of dementia. So, using a 7-stage model, that would be stages 4, 5, and the early part of stage 6, okay? When a person is not adequately engaged and stimulated in a way that meets their needs, you'll often know because they will decline pretty rapidly and they will withdraw and disconnect from life. And they may even sleep a lot because if the mind is not stimulated, it will often default to sleep. The brain requires a certain level of stimulation to stay awake and alert. When the stimulation decreases or stops, the brain may transition into a state of rest, leading to drowsiness or sleep. And this will also make your job as a caregiver harder, sooner, because they will become dependent on you sooner. Dementia is very much so a use it or lose it type of diagnosis, okay? So, if your partner is experiencing apathy and is unable to initiate goal-directed activity on their own, and you let them just sit in one place all day, you will likely see them sleep a lot and start to decline both physically and cognitively. And the thing is, once a person consistently stays in this state, it's even harder to get them out of it. Let me explain why. So, do you remember learning about the concept of inertia when you were in school? It's a principle from physics that describes the tendency of an object to resist changes in its state of motion. So, there's inertia of rest and inertia of motion, right? Well, let's focus on inertia of rest. This is the tendency of an object to remain at rest unless acted upon by an external force, okay? And this can be applied to human behavior as well, particularly in the context of motivation and activity. So, inertia can help explain why it's challenging for someone who has been in a consistent state of rest to start being active. Imagine a person who has been in a state of rest for a long time. This could mean they have been inactive, not engaging in physical activity, not pursuing any personal goals or projects, not socially engaging with anyone. This state of rest is akin to the inertia of rest. People in a prolonged, comfortable, and active state tend to stay inactive. It's familiar and requires no additional energy or effort. It's the easy thing to do, and it can become habitual. And as we talked about, overcoming inertia of rest requires a force, right? This means that the initial push to start an activity can feel so much more significant when a person has been inactive for a while. Do you see the problem here? So we have to be very, very careful about allowing someone with dementia to live a quiet life, especially depending on how we are defining it. There has to be balance when it comes to activity and rest, and this balance will look different for everyone, okay? But that is all for this little discussion. If you want to share your thoughts and experiences, I would love to hear. You can leave me a comment if you're listening to this on Spotify, or you can shoot me a message at podcast@whatthedementia.com, okay? So hopefully you enjoyed this podcast episode and it gave you some food for thought, some things to think about and consider. If you haven't already, please be sure to check out our website, letsbamboo.com, for more support along your dementia care journey. And if you would like to join our newsletter, you can go to letsbamboo.com/newsletter. Okay? Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of What the Dementia by Bambu Care. We look forward to catching you on the next episode. Take care, and until next time, stay strong, care on, and remember, you are not alone. Bambu Care is always here.